Hi everyone. Hey Doc, I was asked this week, have you ever experienced the same sensation in two different contexts, and depending on where you were, you knew if you were okay or not okay? Now I'm sure that's definitely happened to me, and I told the person precisely that. But, I added, what's more incredible to me is experiencing the same sensation in the very same place, and the difference in how you chose to experience it is only based on whose interpretation you were listening to. Has that ever happened to you? This Shabbos is one example of, depending on where you are and where your mind is, different emotions can and perhaps should be aroused. I remember listening to an otherwise extremely cheerful centurion, Rav Gershon Yankelovitz, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, whose ever-present smile made hundreds of students like him and listening to his wisdom instantaneous, despite the vast gap, over 80 years between him and us. Rav Yankelovitz would talk to us about what Shabbos Mevorchin Elul was like in his hometowns of Mir and Radin, Poland, of his youth. He described how when the Chazan announced Rosh Chodesh Elul, the women upstairs in the Ezras Nashim would sob loudly, and there was always somebody in the room who would pass out in fright. He'd remind us of the serious mood that carried itself in Mir throughout the month of Elul, when Rav Yerucham Levovitz, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, the great Mashgiach, already old and not well, would all of a sudden come to life, offering a daily insightful and detailed Musar Shmuz every day of the month of Elul, and people would flock to go hear him, standing on tables and doing anything possible to get close to hear every single one of Rav Yerucham's precious words. Even the townspeople would run to catch Rav Yerucham, as if he had the key to help them with their desperation during this month of Elul. His description, Rav Yankelovitz's that is, paralleled a perspective that was underscored by many who provided me with a Musar ethical perspective on the month of Elul, and left us feeling a sense of dread. Is dread really what we're supposed to think about the month ahead? But there was another perspective that was stressed to us growing up. I remember the Rosh Yeshiva Zatzal, Rav Chaim Yaakov Goldberg, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, who constantly reminded us how to get ready for Elul. He too spoke about having the same hustle and bustle that Rav Yankelovitz experienced, but it was a different one. It was in preparation. Rav Goldberg would tell us Yamim Noraim were the understanding that that Hashem, the King, would be found most pronounced within our midst. Elul was the preparation period for us to prepare in the way that one prepares from a visit from a future in-law child. The Slonim Rebbe also told his Talmidim to think of Elul as a spiritual boot camp in order to look and be the best selves we could be by the time that Hashem comes to visit. Excitement, anticipation, and preparation were the emotions these more Hasidic approaches to the month of Elul brought. Which brings me to my current emotional quandary. Are we to anticipate Elul, or are we to dread it? And if one approach is superior to the other, then why does the other one even exist? And perhaps most importantly to me, in this age of COVID-19, of civil unrest, of economic volatility, of political upheaval, of fears of educational security, where can we turn to experience an Elul properly? And I believe the answer was in my friend's question about experiencing two different feelings depending on where you are. You see, the same sensations and symptoms that one feels as part of a panic, the sweat, the pounding of the heart, the shortening of the breath, and the adrenal rush, are precisely the same ones that you experience when the band strikes the opening chords, indicating that your close friend or relative is entering the wedding hall for the first time as a husband or a wife. In the former case, the panic, You might report feeling panicked, doomed, or anxious. In the latter, excited, enthused, and pumped. The difference is in the experience. It's knowing where or what to do when you have that excess energy. If you know that the rush is being called up by your body to help you dance like crazy, you're pumped. If you have no clue, you're likely going to be anxious. To me, that's exactly where the Musar and Hasidic approaches converge together. The Slonimer Rebbe noted that the main job of an Elul is to prepare oneself to greet the king. If you got the mission, you now know what to do, and you can go out and do it. Elul is a time of knowing, Ani lidodi v'dodi li, I am to my beloved, and my beloved is for me. I can prepare to be close to Hashem, and I will. It's Elul, and now is the time for me to whistle while I work. The Musar approach reminded us not to dread Elul, but rather to dread not being focused on the work to be done. Rav Yankelovich described that scene in Mir of the people rushing to grab every mitzvah, the easy ones and the hard ones, and he used them as a means to focus and achieve what Rav Yerucham used to call active living Kiddush Hashem. Once focused, the Musar student, like the Chassid, would be pumped and primed. All it takes is knowing what you're doing and where you're supposed to go to get it. Elul then becomes the Yemei Ratzon, the days of desire, days that are potentially great ones. It really depends on knowing where you go and how to go get there. Perhaps that's why throughout the month of Elul, we add a tefillah, L'David Hashem Ori, it's in Tehillim Chav Zayin. In that chapter, we recognize the one thing that David HaMelech wanted most in the world was Shifti Beveis Hashem Kol Yemei Chayai, to dwell in the house of Hashem, but at the same time, Levaker Be'echalo, to visit his temple. As David HaMelech explains, even in the darkest days, Ki Itzbeneni Besuko B'yom Ra'ah, there's always a place to hide in Hashem's house. There's a place to seek Hashem's Shekhinah, to be inspired, focused, and prepared. And the poskim tell us that when the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, that place today, the place to get the strength, whether as a regular attendee or as a visitor, currently, even only virtually, is in the Mikdash Ma'ad, is in the shul. You see, the shul is Hashem's house. When we come there together there, we get a chance to refocus together and meet with Hashem. We can come regularly, Kol Yemei Chayai, all the days of my life. And at times, unfortunately, like the current one, where COVID-19 requires us to be mevakrim, just simply those who wish to visit in person, via Zoom, via YouTube, as we're doing right now, or constant contact or email, we take the time to connect with Adath Yisrael through our check-ins with one another. We know that we can turn to that shul, our shul, and it'll be there to stand tall and proud, to be able to give us inspiration, to be able to find Hashem within our lives, in the good and in the bad. You know, my old high school mate, an incredible dynamic Rebbe, Rabbi Yitzi Ross, recently blogged about a column he wrote in a newsletter that he was putting out for children during the intense time of the COVID epidemic. The column, which he called a weekly feature called From the Yetzer Hara. And in one of those columns, he jokingly said the following from the perspective of the Yetzer Hara. I hope you continue to daven at home. Backyard minyanim aren't as powerful as going to shul. Lately, Rabbi Ross says, he's become worried that his joke was someone else's reality. Rabbi Ross noted that in his opinion as a Rebbe and a community member, it is extremely important to remain very vitally connected to a shul, despite the convenience of davening at home or in a backyard. I can't agree more. Shul is to location what Elul is to time. Shul's our rendezvous point, especially at this time where Hashem is close to us and looking for us, and we know where we get to go to always find Him. Musarnik and Chassid alike align themselves in the klois, the shul, the shtibel in Elul. and go to be attached and inspired. We know that especially in these crazy times, we need to do the same. The letters of Elul are not only hinted to in the words Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li, they appear in another word, a pasuk, Ina Liyado V'Samti L'cha Makom. Hashem brought it about into his hand, and he will give us a place to flee. The context of the pasuk, where the letters Ina Liyado V'Samti L'cha are Rashi Tevos, are abbreviations of the word Elul, the context is in finding a place of refuge for somebody in need of Hashem's protection. If there ever was to be such a sanctuary, it is in our sanctuary. Please remain committed to it, and hopefully, when safe for you and yours, quickly come and rejoin us in it as we work together, especially in this month, to implore Hashem to grant our loved ones, and all of Am Yisrael, a ksiva v'chasima tova, a good, happy, healthy, sweet, safe new year for us, our loved ones in Am Yisrael. Shabbat Shalom to all.